Welcome back, Tribe. I have a video here called Welcome back, Tribe. I have a video here called The One Political Issue That Unites All of Us by Mr. Beat. He explains corporate welfare. Whether you're right or left, you gotta agree on this one. Blows my mind if people don't.
One political issue that unites us all, whether we realize it or not. In fact, if a politician ran on this issue, they would likely get support from folks who lean both to the right politically and folks who lean to the left politically. I'm just a Mr. Beat. Just another person in the media. Wait, I better explain what the media is. The media is simply communication that reaches a large audience. Anyway, many in the media don't let us know about this one political issue that unites all of us. And not to sound conspiratorial, but hear me out. It's because most media is owned by big corporations. And, oh yeah, I first better explain what a corporation is. A corporation is a business legally separate from the people who run it. We tend to automatically assume all corporations are huge, but most of them are actually small businesses. But the vast majority of the media, yeah, it's controlled by just a few very, very big corporations. Oh, and the script I wrote 3 varies, so let me do that part over again. It's controlled by just a few very, very, very big corporations. In fact, these 5 control the majority of American media. So perhaps that's why they don't often report that most of us are united on one issue: corporate welfare.
It's corporate welfare, Lemon.
Corporation. This is the kind of financial extortion we could end up having because of this addiction we seem to have with corporate welfare. It has to end.
We have to end corporate welfare
Now.
And it truly doesn't matter where you lean politically. Folks who lean to the left, folks who lean to the right, capitalists, socialists, communists, libertarians, anarchists, conservatives, liberals, they all generally agree that corporate welfare is bad. In fact, when you search, quote, corporate welfare on YouTube, which is where you're probably watching this media right now, by the way, the first videos that come up talking trash about it are from John Stossel, a commentator who leans to the right, and Robert Reich, a commentator who leans to the left. Well, I'd also better explain what corporate welfare is, since that's what this video is about. Corporate welfare is financial aid given by a government to corporations. So yes, we're talking about public funds, taxpayer money, going to corporations. Ralph Nader first popularized the phrase way back in 1956, and he has spent most of his life fighting it.
I've often said that half of what Washington does is as an accounts receivable shoveling out goodies on the backs of taxpayers to business interests.
The most common form of corporate welfare are subsidies. A subsidy is a direct or indirect payment from...
You know what's crazy about Walmart getting all that government money is when they hire these people on these low wages where they can't afford to live, and then the people working at Walmart then depend on welfare to make up that slave wage. And that's not even the worst part. Have you guys seen those hilarious anti-union videos Walmart makes their new employees watch during the onboarding process? Hey there, little slave. Let's watch this video today on how you shouldn't get together with your buddies and demand better for yourself. Here's all the ways we're going to propagandize you to think unions are bad, okay? You're so lucky we don't have unions at this store. Look at all the benefits you get. It's wild to see, dude. People, literally, the common man talk shit about unions. That's how good the people up top have it. They're so good at brainwashing the average pleb. If you make less than $100,000, you should not be talking shit about unions, period. Even if some of them are corrupt, even if some of them aren't running the way they're supposed to, that does not negate all the good unions have done in the last 100 years for workers. It blows my mind how people can vote against their own interest and how easily they are swayed by propaganda. Dude, it's crazy. This is why America as a first world country has one of the worst ratings for worker happiness, work-life balance, etc. All that stuff is constantly rated shit. Compared to European counterparts where they get paternal leave as well as maternal leave, compare vacations, compare benefits. It's crazy, dude. America is basically a slave state. Americans get worked to death by corporations and the government helps them. I mean, there's a reason that song, Rich Men of North Richmond, topped the charts at #1. We're all feeling it.
From a government to a private business. Yes, sometimes governments straight up just give private businesses money, but they also provide free or cheap land or infrastructure improvements for businesses. Often people in government justify subsidies for the really big projects, like sports stadiums or large factories, since these big projects help the entire community by helping the local economy. The idea is that these big projects create jobs and attract consumers to spend their money there. Yankee Stadium, home of the New York Yankees, is one of the most expensive stadiums ever built. It ultimately cost more than $2.3 billion to build, but an estimated $1.2 billion of that money came from public subsidies. And stuff like this happens all over. My home state of Kansas recently offered
We got money for stadiums, but we don't got money to pump up our schools, our education, our students. We don't invest in our future. They tell us all the time that school lunches, all this shit is getting cut. The quality of the food's getting worse. The kids are falling behind and all the metrics that matter to compete internationally. But we have billions of dollars for a fucking stadium for sports. Priorities as a nation? None. Bread and circuses. Enjoy the fall of Rome. You're watching it.
Offered $829 million in subsidies to Panasonic Energy so that it would build a new plant there. Often, though, corporate welfare is just tax breaks. Corporations regularly use deductions and tax exemptions to avoid paying taxes altogether. In fact, Amazon, which is currently the 4th largest corporation in the world, paid no federal income taxes in the United States in 2018.
Surprise, surprise.
None whatsoever, despite making more than $11 billion in profit that year. In 2021, all of these American companies reported billions in profits, yet that same year, all of them paid a lower effective tax rate than you did.
And post-pandemic, they have record profits, record quarterly earning calls. And then they have this word called inflation. Inflation! Oh, God. What are we going to do about inflation? How about you stop price gouging customers? If margins are really so thin, if everything is so expensive, why do you have record profit? They don't want to talk about it though. Don't worry. The left will point their finger at the right at the left. You're going to say stupid lib, stupid conservative, stupid Christian, stupid LGBT whatever, this and that, black versus white, green versus blue. It doesn't matter, dude. They have us divided in every little box imaginable. They've created brand new categories just to keep us divided and hating one another. Meanwhile, corporations are making record fucking profits, dude. Record money. Rich people swimming in it. Scrooge McDuck. Literally vaults of gold everywhere except in your fucking house. But we're still going to talk shit about one another. Men versus women, all this fuck. We're still going to hate one another, our neighbor, even though, including myself, we may be misguided on certain issues. It's fine, dude. We can have differences and come together at the table and break bread. But we all have to point the finger up and not at one another. And that's the fucking message that they destroy all the time. As long as we keep fighting each other, they Scrooge McDuck their way through life.
In fact, these 4 companies all got money back from the government. But it's not just individual corporations that get direct subsidies and tax breaks. Often, entire industries do. One of the most profitable industries in the United States, the fossil fuel industry, is subsidized, despite the industry threatening the environment. In fact, it gets more than $20 billion in subsidies each year. The pharmaceutical industry, which, everybody loves, and which has notoriously profited in recent years selling expensive life-saving medication, is also...
Hey, pleb. How many subsidies did you get from the government in the past few years? To help your household prop it up through hard times. Go on, tell me. Land of the free, home of the brave. Go on, explain to me how the government helped you during the last few years. Oh, but we have a ton of quarterly earning reports and record profits to speak about every single corporation. And they got bailed out. massive handouts, tons of money from the government. What'd you get? If you're in America, I think you were lucky to get $1,200 for the past couple of years on top of your business being closed. Wow.
So heavily subsidized. Between 2010 and 2016, all 210 drugs approved by the Food and Drug Administration benefited from subsidies. The technology industry gets billions in subsidies each year. The agriculture industry gets billions in subsidies each year. The defense industry gets billions in subsidies each year. I have a whole video about...
Again, just think about it like this for people saying we need the subsidies to compete internationally. How, when you have profits in the tune of billions of dollars, billions, tens of billions of dollars in profit, not gross sales, not gross earnings, none of that shit, profit. So not only do they need tax break, but they also need subsidies to taxpayer funded. Who do you think funded the jab? We all paid for it. How much money did we get back for funding that? Fucking zero.
The military-industrial complex, by the way, if you want to check it out. Oh, it's gone. Sorry, you missed your opportunity. The real estate industry even gets subsidized, despite a growing housing crisis in which people can no longer afford to buy or even rent homes. In 2021, the real estate industry got nearly $38 billion in subsidies. So whether it's big oil, big pharma, big tech, big ag,
and they took that $38 billion, and what did they do with the subsidies? They built luxury apartments and townhouses that you can't afford, way out of your price range, all to turn a buck. No normal neighborhoods, no middle class housing, nothing, no affordable anything. It's all luxury apartments and luxury townhomes. Squeeze as many fucking units as you can in the smallest plot of land and make a killing off of it. Awesome. Why do we have a housing crisis? Why can't nobody afford to buy a house? Oh my God. It's almost like the only thing we care about in America is money.
Big defense, big real estate, big daddy, big mama. It appears that all of us are helping to pay for it. Corporate welfare also comes in the form of exclusive contracts. Governments do pick winners and losers, and politicians do play favorites with certain companies, often due to personal connections. In recent decades, corporate welfare really tends to skyrocket when there is an economic crisis.
And if there's one thing that has unified Democrats and Republicans and everybody in between, it's that we all hated the bank bailout.
Citigroup, Merrill, and 7 other banks which got $175 billion in tax-funded bailout money paid out $33 billion in bonuses.
Bailing out Wall Street is the only way to save Main Street, so says the president.
It worked. That's what the president said about the taxpayer bailout as he saluted the official return of America's auto industry.
The federal government was very quick to bail out the banks a decade ago. No questions asked. The federal government was very quick to bail out the auto industry.
Isn't that guy in the bottom center that's talking the dude that was trying to get everybody to get the poke? And he was literally like, there's a burger element and some fries. What was his payout from Pfizer, bro? Is that the guy? I think that's him. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. It was some fucking politician that sold his soul to corporations and big pharma, and he was eating hamburgers and fries and shit trying to get people to get it.
How about bailing out the nation's largest city? How about bailing out the epicenter
I think it looks like him.
Of this crisis where people have been suffering?
Mohammed, was this a bailout?
Yeah, it was a bailout.
Yep, it's often not the taxpayer getting bailed out during a recession. Instead, it's the taxpayer bailing out corporations.
Too big to fail.
Too big to fail.
To fail.
The idea is that if we let these giant corporations fail, our entire economy will collapse. And, that...
If you're going to argue for capitalism, how do you explain corporate subsidies and bailouts? If you're going to argue that the capitalist system that we're in, because a lot of people name it capitalism, I know it's going by different names now, is a corporatocracy and corporate welfare and all this stuff, but still, the official definition is we're a capitalist nation. How the fuck can you argue for its health when if a company or two falls, the entire economy is threatened? Does that sound like a healthy system? Does this ecosystem sound sustainable in the long term? Or are we just teetering from booms and busts? Think about it. Is this really the way we should go? I don't know. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a fucking commie. I come from an ex-communist place. My parents have told me what it's like. All these leftists talking about we need to go do Marxism and communism and all this shit are fucking stupid. They have no idea what it's like to be in a breadline or only allowed to drive on certain days. Or if you're a man, you drive Tuesdays, women drive Wednesdays. You know what I mean? They have no idea what the fuck communism is really like. That's why everybody in Eastern Europe does not want to see that shit return at all. Only the old heads, the old great grandpappies that are still alive think communism was great because they had a job back in their day. No. But the system we have today also doesn't work. So what's the way forward? Fuck, I don't know. I'm smart enough to know the problem exists, but I'm not smart enough to know how to fix it. Certainly, there are a ton of people that are smarter than me that could give you an answer. Don't know what it is. I know it's none of the systems we have in place today. I know we need a whole new setup. The place that looks like it's running the best in my eyes for most of society looks like Switzerland's setup, a form of a republic where the people actually get to vote. If a politician, or if the government, I should say, in Switzerland passes something that people don't like, they can actually vote right away to repeal what was passed. I mean, that sounds like a pretty good checks and balances. I haven't looked deep into how Switzerland is run, but damn, man, they have a really good balance over there.
Probably would happen, actually. And it would suck for all of us. But isn't that evidence that our economy relies too much on just a small handful of huge corporations?
Exactly.
We saw governments bail out corporations and industries quite a bit during the Great Recession, which peaked in 2008 and started when the American housing bubble burst, when people couldn't afford to pay back their mortgages anymore. In response to this bailing out of corporations, many of which were at least partially responsible for the economic crisis to begin with, by the way, people got understandably angry. Two big movements began as a reaction to corporate welfare, at least partially, during the Great Recession. One was a left-leaning movement, the other was a right-leaning movement. The Tea Party movement, the right-leaning one, focused on lowering government spending and lowering taxes, and Occupy Wall Street, the left-leaning one, focused on the influence of money in politics and income inequality. However, while both movements seemed to be on opposite ends of the spectrum, one thing united them:
So I was looking this up while the guy was talking. So we've sent so far to Ukraine over $76 billion. Remember that number, $76 billion. And then we have, according to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, it would cost $20 billion to end homelessness in the United States. And to put that in perspective, it says Americans spend more than $35 billion a year on gym memberships. So we can send 76 and rapidly approaching over $100 billion in aid to another country. But we don't have the spare change, 20-something billion, just to end homelessness outright in the wealthiest nation that's ever lived. What? Make that make sense real quick. We don't have spare change to open up mental health clinics to end the mental health epidemic in the United States. What? We don't have spare change to inject into the police force to end crimes and soft on crime DAs. We can't clean up our streets. What? How does this even sound right to you? Or is there fuckery going on? Scrooge McDucking, baby. You enjoy your bug sandwich. Thank you, by the way, if you've bought t-shirts. Love you guys. Got the new Hoflation ones out too. I really do appreciate you. It helps a ton. Email me some pictures of you guys wearing the shirts too, man. I love seeing people out and about with them.
Hatred of corporate welfare and special interests. Flash forward to the COVID-19 pandemic.
COVID-19! COVID-19!
And once again, the United States government spent hundreds of billions of dollars bailing out both corporations and small businesses. But guess what? It also bailed out individuals and families quite a bit. And as it turns out, most Americans were just fine with that. By this point in the video, if you're still watching anyway, you likely agree with me that corporate welfare does more harm than good. That it, at the very least, is unfair. But that's just our opinion. There are strong arguments for corporate welfare. Many economists and politicians argue that corporate welfare is necessary to keep the economy growing. Countries have to compete in a global economy, after all, which often makes it necessary to provide incentives to corporations to invest at home. Those incentives? Subsidies. Of course, and as I said earlier, the majority of economists argue that bailing out corporations and industries during an economic crisis is absolutely critical at preventing an even worse crisis. Think of it as a necessary evil. No one feels good about it, but the alternative would be much, much worse. Finally, often the biggest projects only happen to begin with due to government investment. They're just too big, too risky, too freaking expensive. So yeah, corporate welfare may be a necessary evil during crazy times or in certain circumstances, but that's not the problem. The problem is that corporate welfare is the norm. It's the status quo. It's something that governments have been doing for decades now, like it isn't no thing but a chicken wing, over and over again, despite it not being popular. Then again, we know why. The current political system makes it so that politicians are easily bribed. Corporations that benefit from corporate welfare bribe politicians to give them subsidies and tax breaks, either through campaign contributions or through kickbacks. After all, influence peddling, or using one's influence in government in order to get special treatment, is often perfectly legal in the current system. Therefore, the current system must be reformed. There are plenty of reforms that can fight back against corporate welfare, from getting rid of gerrymandering, to term limits, to reducing the influence of lobbyists, to campaign finance reform, or ending corporate personhood, just to name a few. But first, we just need to be aware of corporate welfare as a major problem. It's not even brought up, despite being arguably the quickest way to see how the entire political system is currently out of touch with most of its citizens. And perhaps raising awareness about corporate welfare is the quickest way for all of us to realize we're more united than most of the media wants us to think. Much of what drove the support for Ross Perot for president in 1992.
I'm spending my money, not PAC money, not foreign money, my money, to take this message to the people.
Ron Paul for president in 2008.
Whether they're Republicans or Democrats, they're going to support the corporations. Even in medical care reform, who do you think is going to come out well on this? Corporations, drug companies, and insurance companies, they're being protected.
And Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump for president in 2016.
Legislation to provide $3 billion in corporate welfare with no strings attached to the highly profitable microchip.
The special interests, Wall Street, the career politicians, the system is rigged, and I've been saying it for a long time.
Was a backlash against corporate welfare, whether their supporters actually realized it or not. Those on the left end of the political spectrum tend to criticize corporations. Those on the right end of the political spectrum tend to criticize the government. But what if I told you that these corporations and the government were often on the same team, and the rest of us, we're not on that team? In fact, I predict the politicians in the next election who talk the most trash about corporate welfare are the ones who are more likely to get elected, no matter what their political affiliation. And you're never going to see an ad campaign like this. Tired of big corporations not getting enough handouts from the government? Tired of your tax dollars not going to bail out greedy, wealthy plutocrats? Want less money? Want corporations to have more money? Want them to keep raising prices despite us having less money? Then vote for me. Don't be fooled. Big oil, big pharma, and big tech are our friends. Corporations should pay no taxes. They should get free money. And I'm only saying this because they donated to my campaign. Yeah, if you were horrified by what you just saw in that campaign ad, you're probably against corporate welfare.
Yeah, in the comments, let's see. Privatize profits, socialize losses. I've been telling you guys this for a long time. I wish every American got a pie chart each year showing them how their tax dollars are spent. The nerve to pay out bonuses by using bailout money from the taxpayer is a level of evil that's almost impressive. I never understood why the idea of a family with nothing being given $1,000 is outrageous, while the cruelest, laziest, and wealthiest of us all being given billions of dollars is somehow a good thing. The fact that the government still gives the fossil fuel industry free money despite everything is absolutely insane to me. And the rest of us, we're not on that team. This concept needs to be understood by more people. The primary goal of corporations will always be to enrich themselves and expand their power and influence. And when corporations are, quote, now legally allowed to influence politics, the government will inevitably neglect anybody who isn't, quote, on that team. And that is the crux of the argument, right? That's the problem. Citizens United, probably the most destructive thing. That marked the beginning of the end of America in my eyes. When Citizens United got passed and corporate personhood was enabled, that to me just signaled that's it. Here comes big money into politics. Here's the merger of corporations and state. Here comes fascism. Sure enough, man, within a decade or so, welcome. Look at the world we live in. Look at how they've skirted free speech, the First Amendment. Look at how they're trying to attack the Second Amendment, take guns away now. Everything is being destroyed all around you. And it's influence peddling and outright buying politicians because corporations are people too, and they need help, except you.